Hello everyone and welcome back to The Lost Planeswalker. You're here with me, Jesse, The Lost Planeswalker, and today we're going to talk about some of the new and amazing cards with March of the Machine. This set has cards for every kind of Magic fan, including a new card type altogether called Battles. So, we're going to look into these and some of the cool cards that I think are really fun in this set, which there are a lot of, and just take a look and see, maybe get you guys excited for this new set. Next week, I'll be doing a video talking about Battles more thoroughly. I want to dive into how the rule text works, because the explanations that I've been seeing are kind of weird. There's not a lot of exactly what's happening, so I'm going to try and dive into that and really help everybody figure out how these cards work. Now, let's dive into these cards, and we're going to start by talking about some of the Planeswalkers that are coming out in this set. There are 3 Planeswalkers in particular that I'm going to start talking about. We have Archangel Elspeth, Chandra, Hope's Beacon, and Wrenn and Realmbreaker. I love all of these Planeswalkers. To me, this is what Planeswalkers should be. They're something everybody's really getting excited about. People are thinking about, oh, how can I use this in my deck? Because their abilities are really powerful, and they're well costed, I believe, for their different abilities. I think Wrenn and Realmbreaker is the most expensive one so far, and for good reason. But let's start with Archangel Elspeth. 2 white, legendary Planeswalker Elspeth. For +1, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. -2, put 2 +1/+1 counters on a target creature. It becomes an angel in addition to its other types and gains flying. -6, return all non-land permanent cards with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is such a cool card. I mean, you're making tokens with lifelink, which that's kind of Elspeth's bread and butter. You're putting counters on creatures. It's becoming an angel and gains flying. That's sick. That's so good. It's going to help you protect her. Or if you just need to deal some damage and they don't have any flyers, we'll make something with flying and roll over. And that -6, I don't know if we're going to get to see it as much. I think she's going to be a pretty big threat when she hits the table. But returning all the non-land permanents with 3 or less, you could build a deck around that and just bring back your entire graveyard. I think that'd be really cool. Next is Chandra's Hope's Beacon. 4 red, legendary Planeswalker Chandra. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose a new target for the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn. You can +2 to add 2 mana in any combination of colors, which is really neat. We have seen Chandras in the past that will add red or red to spend on certain things, but adding 2 mana of any color means it doesn't have to be red. It could be another color altogether, and I think that's really cool. +1, exile the top 5 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from among those exiled cards. We are seeing a lot more red exiling and be able to play cards as their impulsive card draw is kind of going away some. This just gives a better opportunity for players to be able to dig deeper into their decks and find those cards they need, instead of just discarding their whole hands away until the red player is sitting there at the table with nothing to do. So I think this is really great. -X, Chandra Hope's Beacon deals X damage to each of up to 2 targets. This could be a really cool way to end the game. If you're just plussing her the entire time, maybe she gets up to 10, and you can deal possibly 20 damage if, she's at 10 and you're -2 of up to 2 targets. So I think this is really cool. Really looking forward to it. And then my card I'm most excited for is Wrenn and Realmbreaker. 1 green, legendary Planeswalker Wrenn. Lands you control have tap, add a color. Lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. +1, up to 1 target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with vigilance, hexproof, and haste until your next turn. It is still a land. -2, mill 3 cards. You may put a permanent card from the among milled cards into your hand. And -7, you get an emblem. You may play lands and cast permanent spells from your graveyard. This is sort of a mix of the first Wrenns we see, especially that last ability that lets you play lands and permanents from your graveyard. The other Wrenn just basically gives you unlimited hand size, and you draw and you take everything that was in your graveyard. So I think this is pretty neat. That tick up ability, I don't know if it's how good it's going to be. It is certainly nice to have vigilance, hexproof, and haste, but a 3-drop Planeswalker you want to play on turn 3, and when you do, you can still tick up, but you're not going to be able to take advantage of that ability. So I don't know how good that is. Now that's most of the Planeswalkers for this set. I'll dive into some of the other ones we kind of see later. But next, I'm going to talk about the Phyrexian Praetors, and probably the last version of them we are going to see. Spoilers if you haven't caught up with the story at all, but yeah, it's you'll see with some of the other cards we preview. So starting off, of course, we have Elesh Norn, 2 white legendary creature Phyrexian Praetor. Vigilance. Whenever a source an opponent controls deals damage to you or permanents you control, that source's controller loses 2 life unless they pay 1. This is a pretty similar ability to Norn's Annex, if you've ever played that card. This is pretty similar to Norn's Annex, where you pay a Phyrexian white mana, so either your opponent pays a white mana or 2 life whenever a creature attacks you. And then 2 and a white, sacrifice 3 other creatures, exile Elesh Norn, then return to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control, activate only as a sorcery. And we get the Argent Etchings. It's a saga with incubate 2 5 times, then transform all incubate tokens you control. Number 2, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain double strike until end of turn. And number 3, destroy all other permanents except for artifact, lands, and Phyrexians. Exile the Argent Etchings and then return it to the battlefield. I can see this being a super powerful card. I think right now this is one of the most expensive cards in the set, which is to no one's surprise, Elesh Norn always is. But this is going to be very fun, and I'm very excited to be able to play with it. Next is Jin-Gitaxias. 3 blue, legendary creature Phyrexian Praetor, Ward 2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell with mana value of 3 or greater, draw a card. For 3 and a blue, exile Jin-Gitaxias, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. Activate only as a sorcery and only if you have 7 or more cards in hand. The Great Synthesis. The first one is draw a card equal to the number of cards in your hand. You have no maximum hand size for as long as you control the Great Synthesis. Number 2, return all non-Phyrexian creatures to their owner's hand. So basically a mini board wipe in blue. And 3, you may cast any number of spells from your hand without paying their mana cost. Exile the Great Synthesis, then return it to the battlefield. This is going to be a card everybody's going to be looking out for, and with all of these new Phyrexian Praetors that transform into these enchantments, I think we're going to see a lot more enchantment removal in the next set of Standard and other games of Commander and whatnot, because these things are going to be powerful, and you're going to want to get rid of them as fast as possible. Next, we have Sheoldred, 3 black, legendary creature Phyrexian Praetor. Menace. When Sheoldred enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature or planeswalker. 4 and a black. Exile Sheoldred, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. Activate only as a sorcery and only if an opponent had 8 or more cards in their graveyard. And we get the True Scriptures. Number 1, for each opponent, destroy up to 1 target creature or planeswalker that player controls. Number 2, each opponent discards 3 cards, then mills 3 cards. And number 3, put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. Exile the True Scriptures, then return it to the battlefield. There's not that many cheaper ways to do a mass reanimation spell, and along with you purposefully milling and killing your opponent's stuff, Sheoldred is probably my pick, the strongest card in this set. Black is very good at getting things back from your graveyard, so even if this is destroyed, there's not really a chance that this is going to go away permanently. You can just get it back and recast it, and this is going to be a really scary threat. Along with the last Sheoldred, I think she is very, very much a threat in this new Standard. And next, for most of the time, he's been the most underpowered Phyrexian Praetor. We have Urabrask, 2 red, legendary creature Phyrexian Praetor. He has first strike, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it deals 1 damage to target opponent, and you get a red mana, which is really good. And also, pay a red, exile Urabrask, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. Activate only as a sorcery, and only if you cast 3 or more other instants or sorceries this turn. Transformed, we get the Great Work. Number 1, the Great Work deals 3 damage to target opponent and each creature they control. Number 2, create 3 treasure tokens. And number 3, until end of turn, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from any graveyard. If this spell cast this way would be put into a graveyard, exile it instead. Exile the Great Work, then return it to the battlefield. Urabrask is amazing this set. That front side ability gives you mana while dealing damage while you cast your spells is just so good, and there's so many strategies, like with Stormkiln Artist and Professional Facebreaker, that just makes this so powerful. Along with the flip ability of a mini board wipe to lower powered creatures, making treasure tokens, and then just being able to cast everything from your or your opponent's graveyards, that seems really, really great. So I do expect to see this card a lot, and I think this is going to be a really hard card to play against because of how powerful it is. And lastly, we have Vorinclex, 3 green, legendary creature Phyrexian Praetor. Trample and Reach. When Vorinclex enters the battlefield, search the library for up to 2 forest cards. Reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. 6. Green Green. Exile Vorinclex, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. Activate only as a sorcery. The Grand Evolution. 1. Mill 10 cards. Put up to 2 creature cards from among the milled cards onto the battlefield. Number 2. Distribute 7 +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. And number 3. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain 1. This creature fights another target creature you don't control. Exile the Grand Evolution, then return it to the battlefield. I'm not super excited for this Vorinclex. It is pretty good for Trample and Reach for 5 mana at a 6/6 base, and he helps you get some lands into your hand. But other than that, I'm not super excited for it. I think it's going to be very good in, mono green, big green decks. Not saying that this is a bad card, but I think that this is not going to be played as often as your Elesh Norn and Shalordred and Urabrask is. I think those cards are way more powerful, and I think they're just going to be more popular. I mean, they cost 1 mana less, which isn't that big of a deal in green because you're going to ramp so much, but who knows? I think maybe if you can play this and you got another big trample creature, I think you're going to do really well. I think this could be a big threat, but I think you can move just a bit faster with those other decks that might put this one to be not as strong. Alrighty, now with that out of the way, let's start by looking through some of these great cards that I picked out from the set that I think is going to be really cool. So starting off, we have our first battle card, Invasion of Ravnica. When Invasion of Ravnica enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls that isn't exactly 2 color. So this is going to hit all your mono, 3, 4, and up to 5 color creatures, which there probably going to be a lot of. And when it flips, you're going to get the Guildpact Paragon, artifact creature construct. Whenever you cast a spell that's exactly 2 colors, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a card that's exactly 2 colors from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. I think this is a really, really fun card because if you're building a Ravnica deck, maybe you're playing that Niv Mizzet that kind of does a similar ability. I think that's going to be super fun to play. Next, we have Boonbringer Valkyrie. 3 white, creature angel warrior. Backup 1. So backup is a new ability. Whenever this creature enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. If that's another creature, it gains the following abilities until end of turn, which is Flying, First Strike, and Lifelink. This is going to be a really cool ability that we see a lot of, and there's a lot of different abilities you can give to permanents that don't have those. So I think this is going to be a really cool way to do this. Being able to give any creature Flying, First Strike, and Lifelink is going to be really powerful. Next, we have Dusk Legion Duelist. 1 and a white. Creature Vampire Soldier. Vigilance. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Dusk Legion Duelist, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Anytime we can draw on white is really good. Enduring Bond Warden. 1 white. Creature Human Scout. Backup 1. When this creature dies, put its counters on a target creature you control. This is going to be a really cool card for when you want to move counters from one creature to another, but maybe you don't have the Ozolith out or another way to move counters. This is basically just going to be able to put a counter on it, and if you can sacrifice it or throw it at your opponent and they kill it, you can then take all those counters and move them onto another creature, which I think is a really, really cool ability, and it's really cool for a common. Next, we have the Invasion of Belenon. Whenever Invasion of Belenon enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 white and blue night creature token with Vigilance, and it flips into Belenon War Anthem. Enchantment, creatures you control get +1/+1. This is a super powerful ability, and I've seen a lot of other cards similar to this just be played so much because just powering up your entire board of like little creatures is a really strong strategy, so I expect to see this one included in those decks. Invasion of Gobakon. When Invasion of Gobakon enters the battlefield, look at target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land card from it. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. A spell cast this way costs 2 more to cast, and that flips into Light Shield's Array. Enchantment, at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature that attacked this turn. Sacrifice Light Shield Array. Creatures you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. If it just had that second ability where it gains hexproof and indestructible, I would say this is a good card. But all of your creatures that potentially flying creatures that are just going to be able to swing in every turn are just going to get buffed. I think this is an awesome battle that people should be playing. Next, we have Monastery Mentor. 2 and a white. Creature Human Monk. Prowess. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 white monk creature token with Prowess. I can see this being a super great card in like Jeskai decks where you're going to be casting a lot of spells. Not only are you going to be buffing up this creature, but you're going to buff up all of your monks, maybe protected them from a board wipe if you can get them high enough and, maybe it deals like 3 damage and you buff them to 4/4s. I think this is going to be a sick card. You're going to create so many little monks. And I really like this archetype that Jeskai is kind of creating with its, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, make a little creature and just fill up your board with like these 1/1s, and your opponent's like, that's not a big deal, but if you get enough of them, yeah, you're gonna win. Phyrexian Censor, 2 and a white, creature Phyrexian Wizard. Each player can't cast more than 1 non-Phyrexian spell each turn. Non-Phyrexian creatures enter the battlefield tapped. This is a really cool stacks piece I want to show off. I think it's really only going to be super, super powerful in Phyrexian decks, but I can see people just playing this normally to kind of prevent their opponents from popping off, keeping them from, taking infinite game actions to create infinite mana or, take infinite turns. This is kind of going to hold them in their tracks, and I really like it. Sunfall, 3, white. Sorcery, exile all creatures, incubate X, where X is the number of creatures exiled this way. So incubate means create an incubate token with X +1/+1 counters on it, and then you pay 2 to transform that artifact, and it transforms into a 0/0 Phyrexian artifact creature. This is a really unique board wipe, I think, because one, it's just going to exile all creatures, which is super good if you are playing opponents who have a lot of graveyard synergies, but also you're going to create a giant incubate creature that you can keep on the battlefield and protect as an artifact, and then right before it's your turn, turn it into a creature, or it's already on the battlefield for a turn. So I think this is going to be really great. I'm really looking forward to playing this card myself. Surge of Salvation, single white instant. You and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. Prevent all damage that black and red sources would deal to creatures you control this turn. For an uncommon card, I think this is broken. First, you're giving hexproof to all your creatures, which is great. You can cast it at instant speed, so if an opponent is trying to target your stuff, they can't anymore. You're going to be able to prevent all black and red sources damage, which are the colors that really deal damage. That's sick. That's so cool. I have a deck right now that I play in Modern whenever I get the chance that is basically built around hexproof. There's a couple creatures I wish I could give hexproof to that I just can't any other way, and this is going right in that deck. Now looking into blue, we start with Chrome Host Seed Shark, 2 and a blue. Creature Phyrexian Shark, flying. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, incubate X, where X is that spell's mana value. This reminds me a lot of Shark Typhoon, and I think that's what they were trying to get at here, and I really love it. I think this is a really cool way to make a lot of those incubate tokens. Halo Charged Scab, 4 and a blue. Creature Zombie. When Halo Charged Scab enters the battlefield, each player mills 2 cards. Then you may put an instant, sorcery, or battle card from your graveyard on top of your library. I think this is a really cool way, especially a common, to get maybe that really good card you need back on top of your library. And 5 mana 4/4 that does that, I don't think that's too bad, especially for a common. Fairy Mastermind, 1 in a blue. Creature Fairy Rogue, flash flying. Whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, you draw a card. 3 in a blue. Each player draws a card. This card seems to be getting up in the price. I'm not exactly sure how this card is that good. I'm super excited that, our world champion here got their own card, but for $10, I don't know how you win with this. Maybe some sort of infinite combo where, you draw out your library, or make each player draw out their library. I'm not quite sure, but this is a really cool card, and for 1 in a blue with flash, it's actually quite good. I'm very excited. Invasion of Arcavius, 3 blue. When Invasion of Arcavius enters the battlefield, search your library, graveyard, and/or outside the game for an instant or sorcery card you own. Reveal it, put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle. Invocation of the Founders. Enchantment. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may copy that spell. You may choose a new target for the copy. This is just an excellent card. I'm not so sure how the front side works. I imagine that for 7, that's going to be really hard to do in any sort of standard format game. So I'm thinking this is going to be primarily a commander card, and you can't search outside the game for cards as the commander because your deck has to be at exactly 100 cards. But that second ability is going to be amazing. Extra turn spells, draw spells, whatever kind of spell you want, you're going to get to copy it. This is very, very cool. Rona, Herald of Invasion, 1 in a blue. Legendary creature, human wizard. Whenever you cast a legendary spell, untap Rona, Herald of Invasion. Tap her to draw a card, then discard a card. And for 5 and a Phyrexian black mana, transform Rona. Activate only as a sorcery. And Rona transforms into Rona Tolarian Obliterator. Legendary creature, Phyrexian Wizard. Trample. Whenever a source deals damage to Rona Tolarian Obliterator, that source's controller exiles a card from their hand at random. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield under your control. Otherwise, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. Wow, is this a cool card? Mixing this really cool legendary creature with a Phyrexian Obliterator? This is so amazing. This is such a cool card. Being able to exile stuff from your opponent's hand and then being able to cast it is hand attack, and you could hit something really good in their hand or just make it so they have nothing they can do, and I think you may win with this card. This is really cool. I think that the cost of 5 and Phyrexian Black is kind of high. I think all of these transform cards are kind of high, but I think there's some ways in this set to kind of get around that, so this is really cool. Stasis Field. 1 in a blue. Enchant Aura. Enchant Creature. Enchanted creature has base power and toughness 0-2. Has defender and loses all other ability. This is a really cool blue card, and we've seen a lot of these, but if you're going to be playing in any sort of limited formats, I think this could be really great. Transcendent Message. X blue blue blue. Instant. Convoke. Your creatures can help you cast the spell. Each creature you tap while casting the spell pays for 1 or 1 mana of that creature's color. Draw X cards. Like I was just talking about earlier, all those Jeskai combinations where you're just creating a bunch of creature tokens. Well, this spell I think is going to be excellent for a deck like that. You got 10 creatures on the board, just tap all 10 of them. They can either pay for the blue or you pay for the blue, and just draw 10 cards. This seems like a no-brainer. I'm very excited. This is a cool card. Now moving into black, we start with Archpriest of Shadows. 3 black black. Creature human warlock. Backup 1. Death Touch, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, return that target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is a awesome card. I'm so excited to see this. With that backup, you're not only giving them Death Touch, but you're giving them this ability. So if it's a creature with flying, or maybe it's just a little 1-1 and your opponent's like, no, I don't want to sack my big 7-7 to this little 1-1 creature, well, you're going to be able to get something back from your graveyard. This is a really, really fun card. Ayara, Widow of the Realm. 1 black black. Legendary creature, Elf Noble. Tap it to sack another creature or artifact. Ayara, Widow of the Realm deals X damage to target opponent or battle, and you gain X life, where X is that sacrificed permanent's mana value. Very, very cool. And then for 5 and a Phyrexian red, transform Ayara, activate only as a sorcery. And we get Ayara, Furnace Queen, and wow, does she look cool. Legendary creature, Phyrexian Elf Noble. At the beginning of combat on your turn, return up to 1 target artifact or creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, exile it at the beginning of the next end step. I have some really cool Rakdos Reanimator decks, and this is going right in it. I would love to be able to bring back one of those big creatures, swing in, get some great value, and just have it exiled, or it just has exile it at the beginning of the next end step. That doesn't mean if you can sack it before then and then put it back in your graveyard and do it again the next turn. This is such an amazing card. I would definitely pay to be able to flip this because boy is it strong. Breach the Multiverse. 5 black black. Sorcery. Each player mills 10 cards. For each player, choose a creature or planeswalker card in that player's graveyard. Put those cards onto the battlefield under your control. Then, each creature you control becomes a Phyrexian in addition to its other types. I think this is a really cool card. I just wanted to show it off. I don't think it's the most powerful black reanimate spell like this. I think there's some other good ones, better ones, but I think it's still really cool. Final Flourish. 1 in a black. Instant. Kicker. Sacrifice an artifact or creature. You may sacrifice an artifact or creature in addition to any other cost to cast the spell. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. If the spell was kicked, that creature gets -6/-6 until end of turn instead. Well, I think this is a really good general removal spell with -2/-2. We do have a lot of cards in the format now that are pretty big. One being maybe Shlordred the Apocalypse, who you would want to, get rid of, and for 2 mana and getting rid of an artifact or creature, I think this is a really reasonable way to do so. Grafted Butcher. 1 and a black. Creature, Phyrexian Samurai. When Grafted Butcher enters the battlefield, Phyrexians you control gain menace until end of turn. Other Phyrexians you control get +1/+1. 3 and a black. Sacrifice an artifact or creature. Return Grafted Butcher from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. This is going to be pretty much a Phyrexian only deck, but I think this is a awesome lord. Not only does it give all your Phyrexians menace, but it also buffs them, and you can cast it from your graveyard. So I think this can be a great card, and I think if you're playing against somebody who built a Phyrexian Matters deck or tribal deck, I think this is going to be one of the cards they include. Hoarding Broodlord. 5 black, black, black. Creature dragon. Convoke. Flying. And when Hoarding Broodlord enters the battlefield, search your library for a card. Exile it face down, then shuffle. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may play it. Spells you cast from exile have Convoke. This is a really neat card. I've been talking with some of my friends about this card in particular because it is quite expensive. And that Convoke is really tempting because you're going to be able to cast it for hopefully not 8 mana. And you can get whatever you want from it. So I think it's, in the end, you're going to see some really epic plays with this card because you don't have to reveal what you exile with it. So it could be, you know, something that's not a threat and all your opponents spend the resources on killing this creature. Or maybe it's another tutor of some kind or a board wipe or any sort of thing. I think this is a really cool card. Next, we have Invasion of Fiora. 4 black, black. When Invasion of Fiora enters the battlefield, choose one or both. Destroy all legendary creatures or destroy all non-legendary creatures. Pretty good, pretty good. But then we flip into Marchesa, Resolute Monarch. Hey, we get another Marchesa card, finally. Legendary creature, Human Noble. Menace and Death Touch. Whenever Marchesa Resolute Monarch attacks, remove all counters from up to 1 target permanent. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you haven't been dealt combat damage since your last turn, you draw a card and lose 1 life. This is a really cool card, especially if you can play it and then be able to deal with it. You can basically just start drawing cards while your opponents are trying to rebuild their boards. Invasion of Innistrad. 2 black, black. Flash. When Invasion of Innistrad enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -13/-13 until end of turn. Well, I mean, we're in Innistrad fashion, so love to see that. And we flip into Deluge of the Dead. Enchantment. Whenever Deluge of the Dead enters the battlefield, create 2 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. 2 and a black, exile target creature card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Well, I don't think this side of the card is as good. I am very excited to see a zombie synergy card because I'm sure somebody can figure out how to make this really powerful, and you don't have to tap this to activate that ability, so you can make a couple zombies each turn if you have the mana. Moving on to red, we have Beamtown Beatstick. Single red artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has Menace. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, create a treasure token. Equipped for 2. I really like this. I think it's going to be powerful, and I'm glad to see cheap artifacts in red. Bloodfeather Phoenix. 1 in a red. Creature Phoenix. Flying. Bloodfeather Phoenix can't block. Whenever an instant or sorcery spell you control deals damage to an opponent or battle, you may pay red. If you do, return Bloodfeather Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste until end of turn. I know that there's this Pioneer deck that revolves around Phoenixes and returning them from your graveyard, so I think this is another great card to add to that arsenal. I know this can be a great card to get in with and deal some damage, and you can kind of just bring it back over and over again, so maybe sack it to get some value and then cast another spell and bring it back and do it all over again. So I'm very excited to see this card. City on Fire. 5 red, red, red. Enchantment, Convoke. If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage instead. I love these cards. I think they're very cool. Triple damage is not something we see a lot, and this definitely makes sense. Story-wise, if you're not aware, they dropped the entire part of this city on Atraxa to kill her, so I think this card is just even more cool when you think about that. And I love the Convoke ability, being able to tap all your creatures to cast this. Maybe not the best, because then you want to swing out with them immediately, but maybe if you got a big enough board, or you got enough mana, tap them, pay, and then swing in with what you got, and your opponents are going to have to block or take a lot of damage. Possibly one of the scariest cards from the set is Atali Primal Conqueror. 5 red, red, legendary creature, Elder Dinosaur with Trample. Whenever Atali Primal Conqueror enters the battlefield, each player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. You may cast any number of spells from among the non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. And for 9 in a Phyrexian green mana, transform Atali, activate only as a sorcery, into Atali Primal Sickness. Legendary creature, Phyrexian Elder Dinosaur. Wow, does that sound cool? It is trample and indestructible, and whenever Atali Primal Sickness deals combat damage to a player, they get that many poison counters. Well, we got another Blightsteel Colossus. Yep, I know, that's what everybody's thinking. It's not as good, and they purposefully worded it this way to not give it Infect, because that way, if you block with a big creature, it doesn't just get small, and then the next turn, you just trample over and win the game. But it is an 11/11 with trample indestructible and basically infect 2 players. So it's very, very powerful. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of these decks, especially because it's mashing red and green, so you're going to be able to ramp and get to this point so much quicker. Luckily, there's a lot of ways to deal with indestructible creatures nowadays, but oh boy, this is going to be a hard card to play against, so get prepared to see this one a bunch. Into the Fire. 2 and a red, sorcery, choose one. Into the Fire deals 2 damage to each creature, planeswalker, in battle. That seems very good, but also put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards +1. I think that second ability is going to be where this card's going to really shine. We have a lot of cards that already deal damage to creatures and planeswalkers, not battles, but you can pretty much target it with anything. But being able to get rid of your hand and draw that many more cards is not something red can do a lot. We get a lot of that impulsive card draw, which, you know, if we can't cast it, it just kind of goes away. But I think the second ability is sort of amazing, and I'm very excited to see where this goes. Invasion of Kaldheim. When Invasion of Kaldheim enters the battlefield, exile all cards from your hand, then draw that many cards. Until the end of your next turn, you may play cards exiled this way. Just like I was just saying, this is another great way that red is getting to just draw cards and not just lose them all, but, you know, maybe your hand's not great or you have something you want to cast this, then cast that spell and get rid of the rest of them because you don't care. And this flips into Pyre of the World Tree. Enchantment. Discard a land card. Pyre of the World Tree deals 2 damage to any target. Whenever you discard a land card, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. I can see this battle actually being playable in Standard to some extent, in ways in which you basically play it, get rid of your hand, get a bunch of lands, flip it, and then just ping people in their face for, you know, 8 to 10 damage if you have 5 lands in hand. I think this is going to be an epic card. I think this is going to be really cool. There might be some really cool ways in decks that, you know, maybe just want to get rid of land cards and pull them back from their graveyard onto the battlefield, where you can combo with this, so I'm very excited to see this. Invasion of Karsus. Whenever Invasion of Karsus enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to each creature and each planeswalker, and it flips into Refraction Elemental. Creature Elemental. Ward, pay 2 life. Whenever you cast a spell, Refraction Elemental deals 2 damage to each opponent. Not one opponent, each opponent. This is going to be a great way in red to just destroy your enemies, get their health down really low. I really love this card. I think this is going to be really cool in Spellslinger decks. The Ward pay 2 life really isn't that big of a deal. Whenever you cast a spell, you just deal 2 damage to each opponent, so people are going to destroy this when it enters, for sure. Invasion of Tarkir. Whenever Invasion of Tarkir enters the battlefield, reveal any number of dragon cards from your hand. When you do, Invasion of Tarkir deals X damage plus 2 damage to any other target, where X is the number of cards revealed this way. X can't be 0. And we get Defiant Thundermaw. Creature Dragon. Flying, trample. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, it deals 2 damage to any target. Let me read that again. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, it deals 2 damage to any target. This is an instant include in any dragon deck. I don't know what else to say. You're going to attack with 5 dragons, and they're already going to hit your opponent in the face. And then you're going to deal 10 damage to them. This just makes dragons so much stronger, and we didn't need that. In my opinion, dragons are already really, really good. But if you play dragons, I hope you're excited to see this card. Killeran Spell Spear. 1 in a red, creature Jackal Warrior with Trample and Prowess. And for 3 and a Phyrexian blue mana, transform Killeran Spellsphere. Activate only as a sorcery. And we get Gitaxian Spellstalker. Creature Phyrexian Jackal. Ward 2, Prowess. Each instance of Prowess triggers separately. Is this a fun card? I wanted to include this because it just looks so cool. I don't know if we've ever had a card that has 2 instances of Prowess on it, but you're going to be able to make a really big red-blue creature, which is something I really want to do. I've played some red-blue Spellslinger decks in the past, and this is awesome. I love this card. I love the Prowess. I think it's just really cool, well-balanced. I think we're going to see it. I think it's really neat. Lithomantic Barrage. Single red. Sorcery. This spell can't be countered. Lithomantic Barrage deals 1 damage to target creature or planeswalker. It deals 5 damage instead if that target is white and or blue. I love this card. This is a great card for red. It really fits into that red hates blue kind of theme where it's going to deal 5 damage instead if it's white or blue. You know, I think the white is also pretty good. You have a lot of big flyers in red, and I think 5 is that perfect amount of damage to be able to get rid of those. Rampaging Raptor. 2 red creature dinosaur. Trample haste. 2 in red. Raging Raptor gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Whenever Raging Raptor deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls or battle that player protects. If you're gonna be playing a battle synergy, I think this is a really cool card for you. I don't know how well this is gonna work outside of that though. I don't see a lot of people playing planeswalkers all the time, so I don't know if it's really gonna be that great against them. I mean, obviously, if you're able to deal damage, you're gonna be able to kill a planeswalker as well. But as far as the value goes, I think the trample, haste, and being able to buff it is a really cool ability. Voldaren Thrillseeker, 2 and a red, creature vampire warrior with backup 2. 1, sacrifice this creature, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. I think this is a really, really cool ability, primarily because of the sack. I wish you could be able to blink this creature so you could do it every turn and just be able to put backup on a creature, make it bigger, and then sacrifice it and deal a bunch of damage. I think this is such a neat flavor card. I love the art for it. You know, she's fighting these like jackal looking creatures, werewolves maybe that were Phyrexianized. So this is a really cool card. War Train Slasher, 3 and a red, creature Wolverine Dinosaur, menace. Whenever War Train Slasher attacks a battle, double its power till end of turn. I think just from the cards I've showed off so far, we can really see that red is the battle fighter color. There's so many cards that really revolve around dealing damage to battles or like this doubling its power. I think that's really neat. Moving into green, we have Ancient Imperiosaur, 5 green creature dinosaur with Convoke. Trample, Ward 2, and Ancient Imperiosaur enters a battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters on it for each creature that convoked it. So you're telling me that if I convoke 7, this will be a Trample Ward 2 2020 dinosaur? Is that what I'm hearing? Because that sounds amazing. That sounds absolutely amazing. This is such a cool card. If you didn't realize that you can make it a 2020 with Trample and Ward 2, now you can. Play this card, you're gonna surprise everybody at the table, and they're just gonna be like, can somebody kill it? Because that seems really good. Deeproot Wayfinder, 1 in the green, creature Merfolk Scout. Whenever Deeproot Wayfinder deals combat damage to a player or battle, surveil 1. Then you may return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. To surveil, look at the top card of your library, you may put that card into your graveyard. This is a really cool Merfolk Scout. I really like the ability, I think this is really good, and especially a 2/3 that only costs 1 in the green. I think you're gonna play this early and be able to use its ability. Doomscar Warrior, 2 green creature human warrior, backup 1, trample. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, look at that many cards from the top of your library. You may reveal a creature or land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This is especially cool with backup, because if you can do this not only with this creature but another one, maybe a bigger one, and get whatever creature in the top, I don't know, 8 to 10 cards to your library maybe, that seems a really good ability. Glistening Dawn, 2 green sorcery, incubate X twice, where X is the number of lands you control. This seems pretty good. If you're playing a Lands Matters deck and maybe you've got a lot of lands, yeah, make some really big tokens that you can just pay and create creatures out of. Herbology Instructor, 1 in a green, creature Treefolk Druid. When Herbology Instructor enters battlefield, you gain 3 life. 6 in a Phyrexian black mana, transform Herbology Instructor into Milady Invoker, creature Phyrexian Treefolk. This creature transforms into Milady Invoker. Target creature an opponent controls gets -0/-X until end of turn, where X is Milady Invoker's power. This is a really, really cool card. Especially, you can just put this on any creature. So when you attack, you can just kill somebody's really good thing. And I think this is really fun. Invasion of Ikoria, X green. When Invasion of Ikoria enters the battlefield, search your library and or graveyard for a non-human creature card with mana value X or less and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle. And then we get Zilortha, Apex of Ikoria, legendary creature dinosaur. Reach. For each non-human creature you control, you may have that creature assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. I don't need to explain why this is good. I don't need to explain why I'm going to be scared of this card. Very, very scared of this card. All parts of this card are very good, and we're just lucky that it's one of the battles that you have to deal a lot of damage to be able to transform it. Invasion of Chandalar, 3 green. When Invasion of Chandalar enters the battlefield, return up to 3 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. That seems pretty good. And then we get Leyline Surge, enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. I think this is at home in decks that pitch things to the graveyard, especially your big creatures. Get them back with this card, and then transform it and just play them for free. What could be wrong with that? This seems incredibly powerful. Kami of the Whispering Hopes. Creature Spirit. If one or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a permanent you control, that many +1/+1/+1 counters are put onto that permanent instead. Tap, add X mana of any one color, where X is Kami of Whispering Hope's power. Ozolith, the Shattered Spire. 1 in a green. Legendary Artifact. If one or more +1/+1 counters would be put onto an artifact or creature you control, that many +1/+1/+1 counters are put onto it instead. 1 in a green, tap. Put a +1/+1 counter on target artifact or creature you control. Activate only as a sorcery, and it has cycling 2. 2, discard this card, draw a card. Placid Rottentail. Single green creature fungus rabbit. Vigilance. 2 in a green, exile Placid Rottentail from your graveyard. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. Activate only as a sorcery. Polychronos Reborn. Green, green, green. Legendary creature Hydra. Reach. 6 in a Phyrexian white mana. Transform Polychronos Reborn. Activate only as a sorcery. Polychronos Engine of Ruin. Legendary creature Phyrexian Hydra. Reach, lifelink. Whenever Polychronos Engine of Ruin or another non-token Hydra you control dies, create a 3/3 green and white Phyrexian Hydra creature token with Reach, and a 3/3 green and white Phyrexian Hydra creature token with lifelink. This is a very cool card. I really like it, and it's very powerful too. Sandstalker Maloch. 1 green green creature lizard. Flash. When Sandstalker Maloch enters the battlefield, if an opponent casts a blue and/or black spell this turn, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a permanent card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Tribute to the World Tree. Green, green, green enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card if its power is 3 or greater. Otherwise, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. This is a great card to buff up your small creatures and let you draw cards on your big creatures. Now, let's go and look at some of the partner pairing cards we have and some of the other multicolored cards that came out in the set. First off, we have Baral and Kari Zev. 1 blue, red. Legendary creature human. First strike and menace. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, you may cast a spell with lesser mana value that shares a card type with it from your hand without paying its mana cost. If you don't, create First Mate Ragavan, a legendary 2/1 red monkey pirate creature token. It gains haste until end of turn. Borborgamos and Fizzlethip. 2 green, blue, red. Legendary creature Cyclops Homunculus. Whenever Borborgamos and Fizzlethip enters the battlefield or attacks, draw a card. Then you may discard any number of land cards. When you discard 1 or more cards this way, Borborgamos and Fizzlethip deals twice that much damage to target creature. 1 and a blue, put Borborgamos and Fizzlethip into its owner's library, 3rd from the top. Deru and Hazoret. 2 red, red, white. Legendary creature human god. As long as you control 1 or fewer cards in hand, Deru and Hazoret has vigilance and haste. Whenever Deru and Hazoret attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may exile a legendary creature card from among them. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Until end of turn, you may cast the exile card without paying its mana cost. Grana and Linvala. 1 white, white, black. Legendary creature, vampire, angel. Flying, vigilance. Activated abilities of creatures your opponents control can't be activated. Grana and Linvala has all activated abilities of all creatures your opponents control. You may spend mana as though it was mana of any color to activate those abilities. Arent and Gyada, 1 white, blue, legendary creature, human angel. Flash, flying. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast spells with flash or flying from the top of your library. Golta and Mavrin. 3 green, green, white, white. Legendary creature, dinosaur, vampire. Trample. Whenever you attack, choose one. Create a tapped and attacking XX green dinosaur creature token with Trample, where X is the greatest power among other attacking creatures. Or create X11 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is the number of other attacking creatures. Glissa, Herald of Predation. 3 black, green. Legendary creature, Phyrexian zombie elf. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose one. Incubate 2 twice. Transform all incubate tokens you control. Phyrexians you control gain first strike and death touch until end of turn. Hidetsugu and Kairi, 2 blue, blue, black. Legendary creature, ogre, demon, dragon. Flying. When Hidetsugu and Kairi enter the battlefield, draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. When Hidetsugu and Kairi dies, exile the top card of your library. Target opponent loses life equal to its mana value. If it's an instant or sorcery card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. Inga and Esaka, 2 green, blue. Legendary creature, human, god. Creatures you control have vigilance, and tap to add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells. Whenever you cast a creature spell, if 3 or more mana from creatures was spent to cast it, draw a card. Invasion of Amonkhet. When Invasion of Amonkhet enters the battlefield, each player mills 3 cards, then each opponent discards a card, and you draw a card. Then when it flips, you get Lazotep Convert. Creature Zombie. You may have Lazotep Convert enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature card in a graveyard, except it's a 4/4 black zombie in addition to its other types. Invasion of Azgul. When Invasion of Azgul enters the battlefield, target player sacrifices a creature or a planeswalker and loses 1 life. We have Ashen Reaper, creature zombie elemental. Menace. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on Ashen Reaper if a permanent was put into a graveyard from the battlefield this turn. Invasion of New Phyrexia. When Invasion of New Phyrexia enters the battlefield, create X 2/2 white and blue knight creature tokens with Vigilance. And this transforms into Teferi, Akros of Zulfir. Legendary Planeswalker Teferi. +1, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards unless you discard a creature card. -2, you get an emblem with knights you control, get +1/+0, and have ward 1. And -3, tap X creatures you control. When you do, shuffle target non-land permanent and opponent controls with mana value X or less into its owner's library. Kolga in Eudora. 2 red, green. Legendary creature, Ape Dinosaur Turtle. When Kolga and Eudora enter the battlefield, choose one. It gains trample and haste until end of turn. It fights target creature you don't control. 2 red-green. Discard Kolga and Eudora. Destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. Shuffle Kolga and Eudora into your library from your graveyard. Then draw a card. Kroxa in Chronos. 3 red, white, black. Legendary creature, Elder Giant Dog. Vigilance, Menace, Lifelink. Whenever Kroxa and Chronos enter the battlefield or attack, you may exile 5 cards from your graveyard. When you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Rankle and Torbrand. 1 black, red. Legendary creature, Fairy Dwarf. Flying, first strike, haste. When Rankle and Torbrand deals combat damage to a player or battle, choose any number. Each player creates a treasure token. Each player sacrifices a creature. If a source would deal damage to a player or battle this turn, it deals that much damage +2 instead. Thalia in the Gitrog monster. 1 white, black, green. Legendary creature, Human Frog Horror. First strike and death touch. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Creatures and non-basic lands your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. Whenever Thalia and the Gitrog monster attack, sacrifice a creature or land, then draw a card. Yargle and Multani. 3 black, green. Legendary creature, Frog Spirit, Elemental. Zamone and Dina. Black, green, blue. Legendary creature, Human Dryad. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Sack another creature, draw a card. You may put a land from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. If you control 8 or more lands, repeat this process once. Zurgo and Urjatia. 2 blue, red, white. Legendary creature, Orc Dragon. Flying in haste. Zurgo and Urjatia have hexproof as long as it enters the battlefield this turn. Whenever 1 or more dragons you control deal combat damage to a player or battle, look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put 1 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. You may return 1 of those dragons to its owner's hand. And looking into some of the colorless cards, we have Realmbreaker, the Invasion Tree. 3 mana legendary artifact. 2 tap. Target opponent mills 3 cards. Put a land from their graveyard onto the battlefield tapped under your control. It gains if this land would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere. 10 and tap. Sacrifice Realmbreaker, the Invasion Tree. Search your library for any number of Creator cards and put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle. This is a very cool card if you're playing an all Creators deck. Very much like to see this card activate. Sword of Once and Future. 3 mana. Artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from blue and from black. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, surveil 2. Then you may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. Equip for 2. And this is at last the final Sword of Once and Future. This seems very powerful. I'm very excited. This is a card I would love to play some in certain decks, and it's great to see it. And that is it. Wow, did I have a lot of cards to show off, but there is so many different variety of cards in this set. I think I needed to show all of those off. You have all kinds of cards from all different kinds of sets. We have all kinds of new abilities. We have a new card type. We have all kinds of different legendaries. We got mashups. We got these Phyrexian Paraders that transform. This is such an awesome, amazing set. And if you are a fan of Magic at all, please, pick up some packs or, just go to your local game store and play in the pre-release event. It's this, I believe it's the 14th. So it's coming up, in less than a week. This is going to be so much fun to play in. There's so many cool cards, and this next set, I guess, this Aftermath is really going to change Magic, and they can't really hint at that at all because it'll kind of give it away, I guess. So I'm really excited to see what changes they're going to make, and just thank you so much for watching. If you stuck around and watched all of it, man, do I appreciate that. It helps me out so much. But if you're not subscribed, if you would please subscribe, that would mean the world to me. if you would maybe leave a like or comment down below, and maybe I said something wrong because I say things wrong all the time, call that out. That's okay. Or maybe there's a card that you thought was really cool I didn't cover, or maybe there's a card here you're super excited about and you want to gush about and talk about. Please just leave it in the comments below. And that's it. So, as always, I'll see you later, Planeswalkers.